Who is Junk Raider for? The franchising edition, I guess I should say. And I think this is an important topic because not just for us, but for folks considering business ownership and starting their own business, you do need to be very, very calculated in what brand you ultimately select if you go the franchise route. And even if you don't go the franchise route and you just start a business on your own, you also need to know what business is the best for you. So I think this is a twofold subject for us. Obviously, we have bias here and opinions, but we want to touch on broadly who is the Junk Raider family for. If you're interested in getting into franchising, being a franchise owner, if you're interested in getting into the waste management space, specifically junk removal, we want to make sure that we're clearly articulating who is successful inside of the junk removal community, specifically within our Junk Raider brand. So with that table set, Ted, over to you for initial thoughts on that question. Who is Junk Raider for?
Junk Raider could be for you. Well, the reason that we came up with the 3 tiers of Junk Raider franchising, which was really, I wouldn't say controversial. It was just a very debated topic, not only with me and you in the beginning stages, in terms of how do we structure this. I think we were always on the same page that we like the tiered structure because we want to go after a wide audience. And we felt like it also sets us apart. Like we didn't see that out there. Um, but it's also something that has come up for me several times with people saying, hey, why do you have these different tiers, whether that's brokers or even individuals? And the answer is simple. There are owner operators out there that we know would be fantastic. They have the background, they have the acumen, they have the skill set, but they don't have the money. And when I say they don't have the money, I mean if we had started off with a traditional one size fits all package, it would have excluded so many phenomenal owner operators. And specifically, you and I really like the target audience of military. We love the idea of former military guys coming on board and girls because they have the discipline, the training, the education, clearly the work ethic, and we think they would make great owner operators. And yet, a lot of times they're coming out and they don't have, like, I think the average that I've seen from other similar businesses that you can start in the franchise world in junk removal is minimum as far as just your upfront franchise fee is around 55,000 and up. And so if you're in a smaller market, that has never made sense to me or you. If you're in a small market that's got under 100,000 population, but maybe the demographics are good otherwise, good household income, good median incomes. If that's the case, you can do well in those markets, but with 100,000 population, you're never going to do as good as New York City and Houston and San Antonio and Orlando, some of those big, big markets. So we were very conscious of that. So that's the reason why we have these 3 tiers. You basically have your small town, small cities, then you have your mid-tier cities. And a mid-tier city could be something like maybe, I don't have the data in front of me, but maybe Greensboro would be considered kind of a mid-tier market. Versus, again, if you're in Houston, that's a max tier. In those markets, you can do insane numbers. You can do, probably 7 figures your first year if you have the right setup. And what does right setup mean? It means if you have enough trucks, if you have enough people, and if you have enough spend in your Google ads in particular. And so there again, that goes back to why we have tiers. If you're that person that comes to the table and you've got fairly deep pockets, you're liquid, you know that you can put that money in up front, knowing that you're going to grow into those trucks and grow into those employees, then you're the perfect prototype for a max tier territory. But if you're in that smaller city and you know that you can still do a great job, you've got the experience, you've got maybe some personnel you could tap into, you're going to come in at the lower tier. So that's why, in short, that's why we have the 3 tiered model that we do.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about that and how we set up the the franchise offering. On the other side of the fence, to me, it's getting into the who is actually good for the business, the junk removal space, and really buying into a franchise. Like you could go out and start your own junk removal company for sure as a weekend gig. Right? Do you want just weekend money? Do you want just see if you could dip your toe in the water and make something happen? Oh, and then maybe a year later, I go full time with it while I hold down my W-2 job. It's difficult to sit here and definitively say we only want people with deep pockets and investor type people to come in, or we only want veterans, or we only want kind of your mid-level corporate America type individual that's got some money to deploy, but they definitely need to be calculated in it, because I think we are seeing and we are going to continue to see good individuals come and be interested in our brand from all walks of life, financially, personally, experience wise. Like they're going to come from all over the board. But what I do know definitively is that the Junk Raider franchise brand and the family is not for folks that are just looking to dip their toe in the water. I
Yeah.
think this is not the opportunity for you in that sense, because as much effort and time that we put in what I don't think franchise owners see is the franchisor side to not only set up this offering and make it available to everybody nationally, but the ongoing work and personnel and financial commitment, capital expenses that we have as a franchisor to keep this system humming, and ultimately supporting all the franchise owners. So if you're the individual that is interested in a Nashville, Tennessee market, and you just kind of want to start, you want to keep your W 2 job, and I keep saying that, but you can in some scenarios. That's why, back to one of my previous points, there are folks that do have the ability to hold down a W 2 job and do this really successfully. But as an example, like if you're trying to get into the Nashville market, that's what you want to own for us. You want to open up Junk Raider Nashville. You want to keep your W 2 job, and you just want to dip your toe in the water. Like, yeah, I'll work on this kind of, and I'll try to find a guy or two to go out and do these jobs while I can't. Or if a call comes in and corporate wants to book this job for me, like I'll tell them like Saturday or Sunday, I'll get to it on the weekend. Like if that's your thought process, then this brand isn't for you. You could do
Yeah.
that on your own independently. But franchising in general is a business model, right? It's not a get rich quick scheme. It's not a multi-level marketing scheme. It is a business model that is meant to go quickly and to scale quickly. I was listening to another podcast this morning of a platform brand that said exactly that. Like it is not meant for you to start a business. Say you do 100 grand a month in year one, and then in year two you do 150 grand. In year three you do 200, and you just kind of slowly continue to climb that way. Franchising is meant to 100x, 300x, 500x your growth year over year very quickly, and so you can't obviously do that if you are just trying to dip your toe in the water again. So that for me is who Junk Raider is not for. If you are, going to the other side of the coin, who Junk Raider is for, it is for somebody who is fully committed to go in and owning a business of their own and putting their blood, sweat, and tears into it, regardless of what your profile makeup looks like. And, as we like to call it in the franchise development process, you could be an investor that, maybe is in your 50s and you've been through corporate America, or you haven't, and or you have started your own businesses, you've bought other franchise brands, but you've got a portfolio underneath, you've got capital to deploy, and you're ready to tap into this space because you see that it's lucrative and you want to just continue to add to your portfolio. You could be that guy. You could also be the guy in corporate or gal in corporate America that has climbed that ladder for 15, 20, 25, 30 years, and you've tapped out and you're exhausted and you want something of your own and you're ready to go and do it. You could be that guy as well. You could be the guy coming out of school, coming out of the military, that is hungry and knows your path forward is entrepreneurship and you want to start something today. That could be you as well. So I'll pause there, and at a broad level, that's my take on who Junk Raider is and is not for. It's to sum it up, it's just it's a fully committed, whatever that looks. And fully committed doesn't mean for you have to be on the truck day one. You just have to be fully committed to the business. You can have all the infrastructure in place if you're the investor guy and you're able to have a GM from day one. That's great, but you have to have a focus on this business to make sure that you can do jobs every single day, or at least 6 days a week, like we're open here in Charlotte, and look to grow that as much as you can in the market that we ultimately award to you, and or start to bolt on other markets around it, or go invest in another market because you've proven this concept. You've tapped out. You've done $1 million in revenue. You've got $1 million in revenue run rate in this market. You want to go after Raleigh. You want to go after Memphis, Tennessee. You want to go get Knoxville, Tennessee. So pause there. Long-winded, but those are my initial thoughts.
No, those are great, man. I would add to it just a few quick points. The first one is from a let's say demographic standpoint. We have talked to people that were in their, probably actually early 20s. Some of our employees have expressed interest, which were late teens. With Levi, for example, we've talked to guys that are in their 60s and really could retire. They did really well in the corporate world. They could be done, but they just don't have that in them. They have an engine and they want to keep it running. We've talked to guys that are currently in the junk removal space. They're junk removal business owners and have talked about converting their existing business to junk raider. I say all that to say it's such a wide swath of individuals that we are interested in bringing on board, because in the end, what we're looking for is, do you have the work ethic? Do you have that desire, that drive to get in here and grow the business and help us disrupt the market? Because we see so many great opportunities to disrupt the junk removal space. And it really comes down to your people. I actually want to go back, though, and tell a short story about why this is such a big deal to me, because when I was 23 is when I started my first franchise in Boston, right outside of Boston. But it goes back a year even before that. So when I was 22 is when I got that bug that I want to be my own boss. I want to be an entrepreneur. I came across this opportunity and I was that guy. I didn't have enough money to get that business up and running to buy into the franchise. So I wanted it so bad. I'd been reading these books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Victory Secrets of the Till of the Hun, all these great books that were just getting me so motivated to do this. So in order to get the money I needed, I sold one of my cars. My wife ended up selling her wedding ring. I sold my four-wheeler. I sold my pool table. I sold my jet ski. I was all in, and I still didn't quite have enough. So I go back to the head of sales for this franchise, and I said, "Look, man, this is how much money I've got. I'm close, but I still don't quite have it. Is there anything else you can do?" And because they believed in me and felt like this guy clearly has the engine and the passion, the desire, they introduced me to an existing franchise owner who said, "This guy may be interested in investing in you. He may just loan you the money personally for interest." And he did. We met, went great. He believed in me, gave me the money at 60% interest. But man, I looked at it like, look, it's not that I'm young and dumb as much as I need the money. I'm using his money to pay him back the interest anyways. I cannot find it anywhere else. I was too young. I didn't have great credit yet. So bottom line is I did it. Within 6 months, I believe it was 6 months, I paid him off in full, and I was off to the races, and that got me started. So that story was really top of mind for me when it came time for you and I to start this franchise and to put the pricing model in place, because I thought of all these young guys, 22, 23, and up, that want to get in this business but don't have the money. They don't have 55,000, 300,000. So truly, I would say that's another point is, as far as who is right for Junk Raider, it's the people that have a burning passion and desire to run their own business. They have the work ethic. And again, work ethic is subjective. Does that mean that we want someone that's physically working on the truck every single day? Not necessarily. Those people are great. Those are our employees. But it's okay to have someone that comes in here, whether they're younger or more experienced, that doesn't want to be on the truck every day, but they've got this work ethic to basically run the business, grow the business. Could be like what you and I do. It's behind the computer 90+% of the time. But we want people to come in that has a passion for growing this business most of all. And that's again why we put these parameters in place and I think have a very flexible model. So as long as you have that and we believe you're a good fit, we're going to do everything we can to bring you on board.
Well, I don't want to skip past the fact that you mentioned at one point you had a four-wheeler, a pool table, and a jet ski.
Yeah. I was
You
I
had
was an idiot.
all of that at once.
I had all of that at 21 years old, yeah. And by the time I was 22, I'd sold all that stuff. Anyway, another podcast. We'll talk about that.
That's
The bigger
phenomenal.
one is the bigger one that I was able to convince my wife to sell her wedding ring, which, she claims all these years later it was the best thing she could have done. Who cares? But I still feel bad about it. I was not able to get that back. I tried. But awesome
Yeah.
story. There's lots of people out there that I know are just like me. They have that same fire. But if they go to our competitors, they can't do it. They cannot come up with enough money. So, especially if they're in a smaller market, that's where we feel like we've got an advantage there. If you're in a smaller market, you come in at that lower price point, you prove yourself, you expand, and you acquire other territories around you. And before you know it, you've got a max territory and you were killing it.
Yeah, and I want to piggyback on that and make sure there's clarity there too. So there's one thing, and for anybody listening to this, there's going to be a broad range of folks who know all about franchising and folks that are just hearing it maybe for the first time on this episode. So I apologize for those that have heard all this before, but in franchising, you typically pay an upfront fee to the franchisor or people like us to buy into the system and get access to everything that you have. So when you talk about the tiers that we have available in our offering, that's one piece of it. The second
Mhm.
piece of it is the flexibility that we've built in the offering. So it's not so rigid. To your point, other franchise brands, even outside of junk removal, are
Mhm.
going to have strict requirements when you first start the business that you have to have XYZ in startup costs. So when you're thinking about investment, it's not just the initial franchise fee. It's everything that comes with starting a business. And I think we've done an episode on this. Regardless of whether you're buying into a franchise or just starting a business independently on your own, you have a laundry list of things you got to do to start that business. Some franchise brands are very rigid and require a boatload of capital to start the business. We like to think that we've set our offering up to cater to those, to your point, that are looking at kind of the lower or mid tier markets to prove out a concept and maybe expand into a bigger one. So, long winded way of saying, to that point, there are lower franchise fees based on the tier that you can buy into. But beyond that, we have a flexible model in the type of truck that you need, for example, how many trucks you need, what we allow you to have, right? A lot of these brands require you go out and purchase a brand new dump truck. We don't necessarily require that at certain tiered levels. So the total investment,
I'm so glad you mentioned that. That's the next thing I was going to say.
yeah, the total investment is on the lower end of franchising in general. And then the home services space is typically a lower investment than brick and mortar in general. But even with us inside that thread of home services, we even are on the lower end of that compared to other home service brands that, maybe in a HVAC or electrical or plumbing or what have you, where you've got a lot of upfront capital expenses outside of the franchise fee.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So, on that note, I was just thinking, we want to give enough information in this video that if someone is potentially interested, they could even make some decisions preliminarily before they even, do any additional homework. So, as an example, if someone comes in and gets the lowest tier, they're in a smaller city, and I think the let's just say it's around 100,000 population. If they come in and pay that lowest tier franchise fee of 19.5, what if you already have a pickup truck? If you've already got a pickup truck that's at least a 2013 or newer and it's black or gray, and if it's not, you wrap it, and we have a place that we can send your truck to. If you're local, where we can recommend it, there's a national company that we use, so that anywhere in the country, for the most part, we can outsource that for you, and you can have your truck wrapped there for a minimal cost. So, in other words, you're not having to go out and buy an $80,000 or more Isuzu NPR, which is what, or NQR, whichever one the company, other competitors may recommend. You don't have to do that. If you've got a pickup truck and a trailer, you are in business. You can go in business. Now, is that the ideal? No, it's not ideal. Now, some would say it is. I mean, there are some big brands out there in the junk removal space that's all they use are truck and trailers. They could certainly afford to do a dump truck. They would say there's advantages of a truck and trailer. Here's a good one. If something happens to your truck has to go in the shop for any reason, you can always get another truck. You can just replace that truck easily. You can rent one for the day if you have to and just continue using that same trailer. Conversely, if something is wrong with a trailer, you can just swap out trailers. You're talking about on the high end $20,000 for a big dump trailer versus $80,000 for a loaded Isuzu NPR. So cost and convenience are what some of the reasons, or a couple of the reasons, why some of the even bigger franchise junk removal companies prefer a truck and trailer. But our point is saying, look, if you just come in here with that minimal investment up front, and then you have a truck already, you can mark that off your list. The only other thing you have to purchase is a trailer. It does not have to be a dump trailer. We recommend that because it just makes it easier for you, but you don't have to do that. As long as it looks nice and it's on brand and we're going to help you, we're going to guide you through that process, you're in business. So there again, we're trying to keep the expense, that investment to a minimum, especially in the smaller markets, because we want you to be successful. We don't want you to come right out of the gate and be saddled with debt. You got to pay all that stuff back. So
Mm,
keep that in mind as you're doing your due diligence. That will make a tremendous difference in terms of how quickly you can pay that debt off, and then you can be obviously in a much better position to grow.
yeah. A few more things from me before we wrap up here. I've got written down here somebody eager to, or I should say, understands the value of a system and following a system. There's a lot of people in the world. You and I are great examples of it, right? We want to go over here and try this thing, figure it out, build something on our own. We're going to figure everything out and get this thing off the ground, and it's going to be super successful. There's other folks that have that mindset, but they don't really care about the creativity. They
Yeah.
want to follow somebody else's proven roadmap that's already been done before them, whether that was done for 5 years, 50 years, what have you. And they want to follow that and get their business scaled off the ground as quickly as possible. Those are the folks we're looking for, ones that have zero problem following a system. Now, to our point about being flexible and not rigid, we do have some flexibility around what are you able to do with the Junk Raider brand in your local market. There's a lot of different things you can get into, and we'll help you with that. But overall, in general, there's a proven business model to success in junk removal, weighted most heavily on how you market digitally and in field. That's a massive piece of this system that I'm talking about. But outside of that, a lot of other just day-to-day operational stuff that is systematized, that if you want to be successful in junk removal and you want to do it quickly, here's the system laid out in front of you. How good are you at following it? That's a massive piece of who we're looking for, somebody that's willing to buy into that. Um, Other three things are, or two other things, you got to be a visionary. In my mind, right? We're okay if somebody wants to come in and own a single territory, whether that's a starter, mid, or max, and that's your goal. Like, you want to own that territory, tap it out, and just thrive in it. But we want folks that are willing to do that, tap out the market, and look at and set the vision for your local franchise company in that market, because you're going to have a whole slew of people working with you and under you that are going to be now looking to you as that visionary, right? If you're coming out of corporate America, midline manager, you've maybe managed teams before, you've had a role, or you've been a part of a team and you've had a manager. You are now the guy or the girl, and you have to set that vision for the people underneath you. That's a massive piece of owning a business in general, not just within the franchise space, but you have to be a visionary, or at least be willing to take on that responsibility. And it sounds a little bit cliche and like pie in the sky. What do you mean that the responsibility of being a visionary? It's a really important role. Like, people in life need vision, and not everybody can see more than 10 feet down the road. You need the guy that can see a mile and beyond. So to me, being a visionary is massive. And then kind of in conjunction with that, just a cultivator of good culture. It's a mouthful, but like, for me, you have to be willing to be the guy that cultivates the culture. When you start this business, you wear all the hats. You're the
Yeah.
owner. You're not an employee anymore. You're an owner. And so, along with setting up your business checking account and buying a truck and going out and picking up a couch, you've also got to become a manager of people, and you have to set the culture. That's now on your shoulders, which I don't know that everybody going through a franchise development process and talking to people about starting a business, I don't know that they think in that lens. I mentioned on I think our last episode, like, I always try to put myself in the moment of whatever it is that I'm being asked to go do. Do we want to go on a family trip to this beach? Okay, let me put myself in the moment on day one. We walk through that Airbnb. Like, what does that feel like? What do I want? Do I want to go on that trip? Do I want to have that stress and anxiety? Well, okay, put yourself in the shoes of the franchisee who just bought this brand. Do you want, in day 10, do you want to look at all the list of to-dos, and one of those is, I got to hire people, and I got to train those people, I got to retain those people, and all of that comes, I got to go get a bookkeeper. Like, who's the best fit? Do I need an investor? All of that comes back to culture, and the culture that you set as the franchise owner. So there's a lot said there, but those are kind of some other things that you have to think about when you're evaluating any brand, but especially, for us, when we're vetting folks to bring them into our brand. Those are things we're absolutely looking for in terms of who is Junk Raider for.
Yeah. Well, I think it's been a great episode. We've covered a lot, and we tried to get into the weeds on this one to help people make a decision in terms of us. Are we the right fit? And I would say, if anyone's watching and you have questions about franchising in this space in general, you don't have to come into this bias that I want to get into a Junk Raider franchise, although we would love that. If you just want to chat about franchising within the space in general, we'd be happy to answer any questions you have. Be sure to check out junkraiderfranchise.com. We've loaded that with 10 videos of the top 10 most common questions that we run into. So check those out. That should answer most of the questions that we've covered here as well. But thanks for stopping by, Davis. Anything else?
No, key takeaways: don't buy a jet ski too soon. Don't buy a pool table too soon. Make sure
Go
whoever
forward.
you marry is willing to give up that wedding ring, and you'll be all set.
That's right. Happy life.